Hey guys, I'm Urizi. This story is all about what if Naruto had a quirk. A reluctant hero in training, but even the reluctant can become great, once they find their cause. Before we proceed with the story, please like and subscribe to this channel if you liked the video and don't forget to check the description for the other works of the author if you liked the story. Let's start. Chapter 35 Rewards and Punishment. Checks. For their work in doing the jobs of pro-heroes, when there were no pro-heroes capable of saving the world, all of the students of Class 1A were given rather decently sized checks for their efforts. Checks from the government that were worth 1 million yen each, about $10,000, for their efforts in saving the world. Sadly, most of the students weren't going to be getting credit for what they did, only the ones who had a direct role in taking down the fortress were being credited in the news as the ones who did anything. That was only because the news had been able to see the kids who were parachuting down from the sky, and had assumed they were the only ones who did that part, while Naruto was the one who destroyed the fortress. For some, the checks were amazing, Ochako, and others didn't really care about the money, Momo. Sadly, the fact that students had to save the teachers had not really gone over well with the parents, which was why the teachers that had to be saved, All Might included, were currently speeding up their plans and visiting all of the parents. It was now more important than ever to get the students to move into the dorms to try and regain as much trust from the parents as possible. It always amazes me how fast he heals. Girl, your arms aren't moving as fast as your mouth is. Midnight spoke down to Mina with crossed arms. The woman was enjoying lounging in a chair, in a swimsuit, while Mina used a fan on her face to cool her down. When Midnight had gotten into her home, she had pretty quickly noticed when she saw her bookshelf, and how her favorite BL books had been melted to nothing. It had been very easy for her to assume that Mina had been the culprit, and even though her reason for being in her apartment was okay, the fact her books, all limited edition, by the way, that she used the most were gone. You two are going to be spending your days off of school working for me until I've had enough. Midnight pointed out as some water splashed on her legs. She wiped the drool from her lips moments later when she looked back to the sight before her. In her other hand was a video camera that was recording Naruto's part of the punishment. I should have stayed injured. I really should have. Naruto lamented the fact he wasn't dying right now. No, he just had to have enough stamina to let Recovery Girl heal all of his injuries in a few days. No, he had to have a sturdy body, a body that Midnight was currently filming. Here he was, being put on display in a fucking Speedo, with nothing else on him. Washing cars for free, this wasn't even to pay for the books. Midnight told them she would forgive them if Naruto did this, and Mina acted as the woman's butler. Even right now, Mina was wearing a butler suit with fitted shoulders, while also taping her chest flat. She had her hair slicked back, and was wearing sunglasses to hide the feminine shape of her eyes. Midnight had turned the girl into a cross-dresser for the very purpose of making her look more boyish, and enjoy this situation as much as she could. She's got very questionable hobbies, this woman is a. Mina didn't even get to finish the sentence, before Midnight picked up her empty glass, and motioned for it to be filled again. Mina was forced to refill her glass with more tea, as the woman enjoyed watching her boyfriend wash cars. She wasn't the only one. Mina was forced to watch as women of all ages with cars drove into Midnight's free car washes to get the view of the boy who was appearing in the news. Even some men, which disturbed Mina a little to have other men looking at her boyfriend, were coming in for the view. I guess it's not so bad though. Mina thought to herself as she glanced at Naruto. She wasn't going to complain about the view she was getting for sure, made her a little hot under the collar to look at him with so much of his body revealed, and not bloody this time. Recovery Girl had done amazing work healing Naruto up to full health again. I should have made him wear a smaller Speedo. Midnight let loose a sigh as she looked at only half of the young man's butt being exposed. She should have also gotten one with a design on it, something on the crotch, like the word big or youth. Something along those lines, instead of the simple red Speedo he was wearing. Keep working until you're dripping with sweat, Naruto. I want all of the cars that come through here to shine. Midnight called out to him, before she turned her attention back to Mina. Fan harder, I want him to sweat, not me. I can appreciate how your efforts were to save the world, but ruining my porn dash. Don't you mean romantic novel? Mina tried to help Midnight's image a little. It was porn and we both know it. I'm not ashamed of my hobbies. Midnight denied the help. She was the 18+ only hero. She had an image as a rather naughty woman to uphold, though she was still a rather modest woman as well. She was not ashamed of her hobbies. Her love for youthful and manly men, and her more lustful side, were not things she ever denied. As long as her hobbies didn't hurt others, there was no reason for her to take shame in them. Anyway, you should be thanking me. I can smell a virgin from a mile away, and you reek of it. Midnight winked at the girl. Mina appreciated that, and she smiled and nodded at Midnight. Maybe this wasn't so bad. You know, I can understand why guys look at girls a little, seeing this is kind of hot. Mina whispered to herself. After telling him I loved him, Mina thought to herself, before her cheeks flushed deeply. She looked at Naruto's body, before she looked away and fanned Midnight harder than before. After a while in her relationship with Naruto, about 6 months or so, she had actually been willing to have sex with Naruto if he ever asked her. She would have never gone out of her way to do it, but she was willing if Naruto ever pushed the issue. Now though, now after admitting to Naruto and herself that she was in love with him, now she wanted it. She wanted to make a move, she wanted him to make a move. It was no longer an issue about her being willing or unwilling, this was something she flat out wanted. She wanted to take her relationship deeper. It wasn't just because she was attracted to his body, but they had been dating for nearly a year, and other than the occasional butt slap, they hadn't gone beyond kissing. Even then, the butt slapping was mostly her messing with Naruto, and him giving her dirty looks for doing it at bad times. Oh come on. Look at the dirty on that car, he's going to get so dirty covered in all of that. Midnight zoomed in with her camera, her own cheeks flushing. She was so going to use this the second she was alone. Mina glanced down at her. You know that is my boyfriend you're objectifying, right? Mina deadpanned as she made sure that she continued to fan Midnight, really not generally liking this part of it. If it was your boyfriend, you. Mina's nose started to bleed a little. It's really dry outside, Mina said, ignoring the water and steam that were around them. She didn't give the smirking Midnight the satisfaction of knowing that she was enjoying this right now. Midnight passed her a cold glass of tea. If it's so dry, you must be feeling really thirsty then. Midnight enjoyed teasing Mina, and watching Naruto. She was going to have so much fun with their punishment for breaking into her home, good reasons, or not. So much good porn of hers had been lost, and just paying for it wasn't going to be enough for her. This girl was so hot for her boyfriend, and teasing her was so much fun. With Ochako. Money, what do I even do with this much? Ochako looked at the 3 checks that she had received. Momo and Naruto, seeing her totally shocked reaction at the amount on the checks, had actually both given her their checks. Since her quirk had been the entire reason they were able to save so many lives in the first place, they had decided to forego their rewards for their work done, and give her their money rewards. So here she was, sitting with enough money to not have to worry about money for a good while, and she didn't know what to do with it. She was pretty sure even her parents had never seen this much money, and they weren't going to accept the money if she tried to give it to them. 3 million yen, it was a lot of money, to not know what to do with. Ochako laid down on her bed, before she rolled around, hands on her face. She kicked her legs out and screamed into her hands, unsure about what she wanted to buy. Screw it, not going to use it, just going to put it in the bank. Ochako shouted as she jumped up. She would save it up, and use it when she graduated from UA, so that when it was time for her to start up her own hero agency, she would have the money for it. With Naruto. I hate this so much. I should be training for the sports festival next week, but no, I have to do this. Naruto hated this so much. The Speedo was super uncomfortable for him downstairs, and he was wasting his time with this. He didn't care if people looked at him sexually in general, he was used to it from Mina when she thought he wasn't paying attention. He just hated wasting time he could spend doing something like this that served absolutely no purpose. He was pretty sure he saw a woman purposely drive her car through a muddy water puddle just to bring her car back through the wash. How haven't I gotten written up for indecent exposure yet? Naruto asked with a frown. Right now, he would really appreciate a police officer coming by, and writing him a ticket for this, that way he could put on regular swim trunks. Speaking of the police. Damn, check on the bulge on that kid. Damn it. Naruto whispered when a female officer passed by on her patrol, and she didn't even do her job. She just eyed him, before she nodded to Midnight with a wink. The two women seemed to know each other. His only hope was the male officer with the woman officer. MMMMHMMM, what a body. Damn it. What the hell is wrong with my luck? Why can't a villain attack right now? Just attack right now so I have an excuse to not be here. Why does a villain never attack me when a pro hero is nearby? Naruto looked at Midnight in the area. What was wrong with his luck? If he had just been out with Mina, a villain would have certainly attacked. Yet, Midnight was here, and no villains to be seen. Thankfully, nobody else he knew is here. Naruto? What are you wearing? Ryuko asked as she walked by in her hero costume. She had her arms crossed as she looked at Naruto, not so much as a blush on her face. He's certainly grown from the little kid I remember. Ryuko glanced at his body. She didn't really show any other reaction though, she was just more curious why Naruto was doing this. Naruto slammed his forehead into the concrete. Fuck his life. Chapter 36 Haunting Dreams. Movie, check. Popcorn, check. Toothbrush, check. 5 intense showers, check. Perfume, check. Almost done with my checklist. Mina was excited as she looked at the list for everything she was going to need. It was after, and the movers were transporting her things to U.A.'s dorms. Her parents had agreed to her moving into the dorms, so she had some time to kill before she had to get back. She would sort her room out after school the next day. She didn't mind living in a mess for a while, not when she had something so important that she was going to do. She had checked her calendar for this day, and marked down that this was the best possible day for everything she wanted. She had finally decided, after seeing Midnight's punishment, what she finally wanted. She literally just finished having her period, so it was the best, and safest time for what she was going to try and get Naruto to do. Aren't you a little too young to be buying condoms? Just shut up and take my money. Mina stated with narrowed eyes. She had grabbed a box in each of the sizes, other than small since after seeing Naruto's bulge, she got a pretty good idea of what his size was not. Now, these are quirk-proof, right? Mina asked as she looked at the different boxes. Her cheeks were burning red, but the woman in front of her simply picked up the boxes and looked at the backs of them. She had done some research, and learned that condoms came with different anti-quirk measures for a great number of brands. These are fire, ice, electricity, and made with enhanced durability. Do they protect against acid though? Mina asked with a serious face. She knew she didn't have the best control over her quirk in the world. The fact that she had melted through her own clothes enough times going through school proved that. But since starting high school, she had really started to get a handle on her quirk. She was 90, 80, 75% sure that her quirk wasn't going to activate when she had sex. That was a C on the grading scale, which was a passing grade, right? Just to be safe though, she wanted to at least try and see if there were condoms that were resistant against her quirk. I don't want to hurt my boyfriend. Mina stated with an awkward look behind her, as her items in her basket were rung up. Thankfully, nobody behind her seemed to care about what she was saying, mostly because the guys were wincing in pain and covering their crotches, no longer imaging themselves in her boyfriend's position anymore. Girls who spewed acid were not in demand for sex. Acid? Maybe, I don't know, I've never met a person with that quirk who found anyone willing to be with them. Wow, you're super helpful. Mina sighed to herself. With all of the measures she was taking to make this work, Naruto better be willing to work with her. As in, he better put aside his possible fear of penile harm, and stick it in her. With Naruto. Been a while since we trained like this, you're sure pumped up. Kirishima shouted as he trained with Naruto in his room at the dorms. Kirishima was already done moving in, so they had decided to get in some practice for the sports festival coming up. That meant that Kirishima was getting hard, and Naruto was punching the shit out of him until he couldn't stay hard anymore. It was a good training method, but it seemed that Naruto had really stopped getting anything out of it. What are those, by the way? Kirishima asked as he looked at the bands on Naruto's arms. Naruto punched him in the face. A girl in the support class made them for me. These sense how much my body weighs, and becomes half my body weight. Naruto explained as he socked Kirishima in the forehead. Naruto had 10 of them on each of his arms, and 10 of them on each leg. The amount of weight that Naruto was adding to his body was no small amount, and the layer of sweat Naruto had produced was more than Kirishima had ever seen of Naruto. Naruto kicked Kirishima in the ribs, and broke him from his hardened state with ease, the powerful kick destroying his hardness. Kirishima collapsed and held his side. That hurt. Going to feel that tomorrow. Kirishima grunted out loudly, pushing himself back to his feet to start again. Naruto was his most regular sparring buddy, and ever since they started this, Kirishima had learned a good deal of martial arts from watching Naruto and learning from him. Naruto was increasing the strength of the bones in his fists and legs by attacking him, thus raising the amount of power he could attack people with, without worrying about hurting himself. That was, until Naruto's bones had become even harder than his own hardness, making what Naruto gained from this training practically worthless to him. You're already super strong, shouldn't you be training in your fox dash? I'm not going to use my quirk in the sports festival. I've been relying too much on my quirk lately. Kirishima. I rampaged. I lost control. I can't let that happen again. I locked away my Hoshi no Tama and it's safe again. Until I'm stronger. I'm going to try and use my quirk only when I absolutely need it. The sports festival is going to be the perfect place to test myself. Naruto denied him easily. Kirishima didn't know what it was like to have a quirk that could make you become a murderous monster at the drop of a hat. He had only really used his quirk so much against the supervillain because he could not afford to hold back his quirk, so many lives were on the line at that point. Kirishima tried to punch Naruto, but Naruto caught it and flung him to the ground, before he kicked him in the side, rolling him onto his stomach with a loud gasp. Kirishima got on his hands and knees. You rampaged? I thought you just used all of your power against that super strong dash. Luck, it was sheer luck I only killed that Noma. If Aizawa wasn't there to stop me, I wouldn't have stopped there. I'm scared. I'm really scared of what I could have done. Naruto knew he was safe to talk about this. Kirishima wasn't going to judge him, and it felt good to have somebody to rely on for this. Getting this off of his chest felt good, and his friend seemed pretty happy to be trusted with it. Noma beat me, my quirk activated on its own. It's scary, knowing that every time you use your quirk, something could push you over the edge. Naruto stopped punching Kirishima, and kicking him, in favor of sitting down on his bed and speaking. He didn't want to kill anyone, even villains, if he could help it. Yet, his quirk thirsted for blood, and the more power he used of his quirk, the higher the risk he could fall into another rampage. Even using Four Tails form was pushing what he was capable of handling. Any further and he would usually stop being able to see friend from enemy, so he could only use that number when the only people he could see are all enemies. Kirishima sat next to him. Like your mom. Kirishima knew he was stepping on a landmine. Like my mom. My father is the Thunder God, the legendary number 2 hero, famous for his teleport quirk. He had once saved over 1,000 people in under a second, from a gasoline explosion in a collapsing building, but when people see me, they remember my mom. She lost control, and all my life, people who knew my mom, looked at me with eyes that told me they were afraid of me. You and Mina were my first friends for a lot of reasons. Don't get me wrong, I'm happy I met you, but ever since I've met all of you and learned how to be happier. The bloodlust has gotten stronger. Naruto laid back and looked at the ceiling. Making friends had made it even easier for him to fall into the bloodlust. Imagining them getting hurt, or seeing them hurt, the thought alone could make him so angry. They were precious to him at this point, and losing them? He didn't want to go back to having no friends. Kirishima laid down next to Naruto, both of them looking at the ceiling. You need therapy, you've got a lot of emotional baggage. Kirishima gave his professional advice for this. Not to mention you're constantly being attacked by real freaks, and can't go into the city without a villain popping up, and in the last 2 weeks, you've nearly died 3 times. 4. When was the fourth time? Kirishima didn't remember Naruto almost dying. He was pretty sure he would have noticed it in the news if Naruto had fought a villain and nearly died from it. Last night I had a nightmare so bad, I actually woke up and had an anxiety attack, felt like I was going to die. Naruto didn't want to mention that. Naruto didn't like that he had been having nightmares every once in a while, but they had been happening. Kirishima sat up and looked down at him in concern. Dude, we should take you to a hospital or something. That is really serious, do you know what is causing it? Himiko Toga. I dreamed that you guys had never came to save me. I honestly though I was over what happened, but a couple of times a week, she appears in my worst nightmares, and next to her are a group of villains, being led by that bastard covered in hands. The dreams feel so real too, sometimes. I see the face of a man with no nose, dripping with the blood of heroes, and then there are times I dream of something worse. Naruto sat up with Kirishima. The dreams had always felt so real to him, to the point when he had those dreams he would wake up in a cold sweat. I'm having dreams of a little girl, with a horn on her head, and she's being hurt really bad. Naruto didn't know what his dreams were trying to tell him, but it was pretty fucked up. The girl was small, she couldn't be older than 6, and her arms were covered in scars. Her clothes were little more than rags, and her red eyes called for him without saying it. Dude, dark. Monster Fox. It was formed when a person with the Nine-Tails quirk and the Gigantification quirk had a child, and that child gained a composite quirk. The Nine-Tails quirk gave the person with it the power to transform into a Nine-Tails, and manifest all of the abilities of the legendary creature. With my Monster Fox quirk, I think I've been awakening the hidden powers of the Nine-Tails quirk. I'm afraid these dreams, that they aren't dreams. Naruto hated that thought so much. If so, then his visions were visions of the future. They were visions of people suffering, and there was a little girl who needed his help. His contact with his Tama had been when he started to get these dreams, and now, they wouldn't stop even now that he had locked it away again. Kirishima didn't know what to say, so he just placed his arm around Naruto's shoulder. Naruto looked at him, and he stopped with that. Sorry. It's fine. If these dreams are true though, then there is a little girl out there, scared and abused, and I have the power to save her. My dream last night, was when I saw the little girl. Eri, Naruto spoke in a practical whisper. He had just heard her name briefly in the dream, and he didn't know what her last name was. She's just a kid, no kid should be treated like a menace by adults because of a power they didn't choose. Like you? Kirishima asked with a look at Naruto. Naruto looked at him, shocked. What? You're seeing yourself in this girl, right? I mean, the government told the top 10 to kill you if it came down to it. You didn't have any friends growing up, and you grew up with the knowledge that your parents killed each other, and everyone is always putting a ton of pressure on you. This girl in your dreams, you're relating to her situation, because you can understand her, not to mention you've been tortured and abused by that blood freak, and you've nearly died several times. Kirishima wasn't smart by any stretch of the word, but even he could see that Naruto was seeing himself in this girl. Their situations were mirrors of each other, where Naruto had his uncle, it was only later in his life that he got the support of others. Everything this little girl was going through, Naruto had experienced at some point in his life, so it was easy to see himself in this girl's shoes, and it just made everything they were doing to her in the dream that much more horrible to him. That makes me feel worse. Naruto pointed out. His friend sucked in his breath, whoops. Have you talked about any of this to your uncle? Of course not, he's got so much on his plate. I don't want him to have to deal with my problems, no. Naruto turned bright red when he realized what he had just said. No. Don't repeat it. Naruto tackled Kirishima and covered his mouth to prevent him from saying those words again. He had a verbal tic, and he didn't like it when people knew about it. He had spent so long trying to get rid of it, but it would seem that in his moment of weakness, his verbal tic had decided to make a reappearance. The two of them wrestled on the bed for a moment, before Naruto got him in a rough headlock. Don't you dare tell anyone, got it? Naruto threatened in a low growl. Got it, no. Kirishima went flying out the window. Chapter 37 Mina's Bad Week. Naruto, let's take our relationship to the next level. Kirishima blinked and looked towards Mina as she burst through the door to Naruto's room. He had no clue what to make of what she had just screamed into his ear. She had actually surprised him to the point that he had jumped out of Naruto's bed, dropping the martial arts magazine that he was reading. Mina had closed her eyes when she entered the room, so she didn't know it, but it was just him, Kirishima, in the room at the moment. There was a heavy silence. Naruto isn't here, he's out training right now. He asked me to watch his new pet. Kirishima pointed to the tank in the room, that had a toad sitting in the middle of it, the toad croaking as it made itself comfortable in its new home. Also, weren't you two already screwing? Kirishima was always under the impression that Naruto and Mina had been screwing already, and just didn't make a big deal out of it since they never really made a big deal out of their relationship. Until Mina had confessed her love for Naruto, most people in the class hadn't really known about their relationship, those that didn't pay close attention. They kept their affection for each other pretty tame in public, it was in private that they really showed their feelings. He had just assumed Mina had already put the moves on Naruto before now. Damn it. With Naruto? Yes. Now this is the perfect way to get ready. Naruto blocked a bear claw, not using his quirk, before he grabbed a firm hold on it, and he threw the shark over his shoulder that had thrown the punch, pulling it off of its spider legs, and slamming it onto the ground. There was no mistake in that sentence. The shark with the quirk, that Naruto had originally believed he killed until it saved his life, had made itself known to him again. So, since the shark could fly, Naruto had taken it hunting in the forest to find it the best animal stuff to work with. The shark seemed to have eaten some kind of intelligent animal, maybe a dog, and had gained the mental abilities of such an animal. When Naruto had beaten the shark, he had set himself firmly as its master, and it had actually been showing him some affection. Now, the shark had evolved even further with its quirk, and had become able to manifest more animal parts out of its body. It had 8 large spider legs coming from its body, complemented by the large bird wings coming from its back. Its left arm was a large bear arm, while it had a massive crab claw for a right arm. It seemed his shark could only manifest a max of 5 different animal traits at the same time. This shark would make an amazing sparring partner. Mina, Day 2. She was going to do it, only a few days until the sports festival, and she was going to get this done before then. She knocked on Kirishima's door, and when he opened it up, she sighed in relief at the fact he was in there, and Naruto was not. You, stay here, no matter what you hear come from Naruto's room, you stay here. Mina threatened him as she let a small amount of acid pool into the palm of her hand. His hardness would offer him no protection from her acid, and he nodded his head very quickly. Nodding her head, she went over towards Naruto's room, and she didn't even knock as she went right in. She was about to open her mouth, before she closed it when she saw that Naruto had company. She was very surprised when she saw Momo was sitting with Naruto by his desk, a book in her hands, while Naruto was doing some kind of work with her watching him. You got this wrong. Damn it. Thanks. Naruto erased and corrected the mistake. Since he was lousy at studying, and he had lousy teachers growing up, and most of his time at UA was spent severely injured, he was way far behind in his studies. Academics-wise, he was at the bottom of the class, even though he was at the top of the class in the physical and battle aspect. Momo had noticed his low scores in class, and had actually offered to come to his room and tutor him in the subjects that he was behind in. Basically, everything except English, which he was at the surprisingly top of the class in, mostly because his uncle loved all things American, so he had been to the country quite a few times himself, and had been forced by his uncle to learn the language. Sorry Mina, can you leave? Naruto can't have any distractions from his studies. Momo looked towards Mina, and she placed her hand on the back of Naruto's head, forcing him to keep looking at his work. Mina pouted. Damn it. Mina, Day 3. Thankfully, Momo and Naruto were just going to study together once a week, which meant today was the day, for sure. She had checked up on Momo, who was training for the sports festival. She had locked Kirishima in his room. Those two, the ones closest to Naruto, were out of her way, so with that in mind, she was free to seduce Naruto. She opened the door. Ribbit, I didn't know you knew so much about toads. There was Tsuyu, with Naruto as she helped him feed his new pet toad. They were placing crickets in the cage, and watching as the toad ate them quickly, once he actually noticed that they were around him. She shouldn't be surprised to see Tsuyu in Naruto's room one day since he got a new pet, considering that toads and frogs were a part of the same animal family. This is Gamekaki, I named him after my last one, Gamabunta. I'm going to get him a brother, since he seems a little lonely. I know a ton about toads and frogs, and I even developed my own martial arts style based around them. I call it Frog Kata. Naruto explained to Tsuyu as he took his toad out of its tank, and passed it to Tsuyu gently. She took it and looked at it, before she looked up at Naruto. Frog Kata? That sounded interesting. I've never seen you use it. Tsuyu pointed out, since whenever he used his quirk, he used a strange form of boxing that she didn't recognize. She had no clue what it was called, but it seemed like a strange mix of several different styles of combat, with Naruto's own unique flair to it. Never mind. I've seen it, can you teach me? I want to be even more froggy. Tsuyu poked a finger to her chin in thought. Naruto leaned down at Gamekaki at her chest level, and grinned at the toad, not noticing Mina behind him. Sure thing, let's start after the sports festival. You can ask Kirishima and Deku, my training will leave you hurting. Naruto let his toad jump back into his hands, and placed it back into his tank. Mina pouted. Damn it. Mina, day 4. Momo was training, Kirishima was training, and Tsuyu was spending her afternoon studying on her own. Those three, the only ones that made sense to visit Naruto and get in her way, were out of the way. She had threatened Kirishima, checked up on Momo, watched as Tsuyu rejected a person's offer to hang out. Those were the only 3 people who would interrupt her, to her knowledge. Naruto was in his room, seeing as she could hear the music coming from his room at the moment. Ah! Female scream, rushing into Naruto's room, her jaw dropped as she dropped to her knees. There was Kyoka, laying on her chest, with Naruto sitting on her back. Naruto was sitting cross-legged, and holding Kyoka's arms behind her back. The girl was covered in sweat to the point that it was showing through her clothes, of which she was thankfully wearing her gym clothes. She was using her quirk, not her hands, to push herself off the ground with Naruto's added weight. The girl was also training to keep her back as straight as possible while carrying a larger man on her, in the situation that she would ever have to lift a man's weight. What the hell? Why is she asking for? She went on to the fortress with him, she must have wanted his help. Mina hated that her boyfriend was strong and kind right now, since if somebody wanted training from him, he would give it to them if he didn't have a reason to say no. That was 47. Just 203 more to go. You're a demon. Kyoka shouted, almost actually regretting the fact that she had asked for Naruto's help to grow stronger. Don't worry, after this you can sit on my back as I do 2500 push-ups with one arm, if it makes you feel better. Naruto told her with a shrug of his shoulders. She wouldn't weight a ton, but she would add to his workout. Mina dropped to her side with a twitching eye. Damn it. Mina, day 5. Kirishima was in detention with Bakugo, Momo was training alone, Tsuyu was training for the sports festival, Kyoka was in her bed asleep after the nightmare Naruto put her through yesterday. She could do this. Looking at Naruto's door, she twitched. Do not disturb. Putting her ear up to the door, she could hear him asleep, more than likely on the floor or something. She sighed to herself, and rubbed the back of her head. She wanted to wake Naruto up, but she wouldn't do that to him. Not when he wanted to sleep. She wouldn't deprive him of his sleep, since he seemed to be having trouble sleeping lately, and he sounded pretty sound asleep. She needed to be supportive. Damn it. Mina, day 6, day before sports festival. Mina let loose a scream of fear when she opened Naruto's door, and what greeted her was the teeth of a shark. She nearly got her head bitten off, before Naruto pulled the shark back into the room and looked at her. No, bad, no eating people. Naruto punched his shark on the nose. Mina's jaw just dropped, sitting on her ass in the hallway, hand over her heart as she looked at the shark that was trying to escape Naruto. No, bad, down, sit. Naruto shouted at the shark, and the spider legs it was using started to take a sitting position, and it glared towards Mina with its shark tail showing aggression. I peed a little. Sup Mina, need something? Sorry about this guy, I brought him here to see about training this guy to be more obedient. He hasn't been handling the forest really well, poor guy. Naruto rubbed the shark under the jaw, and it was soothed by this action. What the fuck? Mina stood up, and she looked down at her legs. Thankfully, it wasn't visible that she wet herself from that surprise. Bad news, now that she had wet herself, she was not really in the mood to have sex herself. Her heart was hammering in her chest, and her pink skin had gone paler, not to mention there was a quirk-wielding shark in Naruto's room right now. It was kind of a mood killer to be honest. Nothing, just wanted to say hi. Naruto looked at her in confusion as she spoke, but she continued as she turned around and started to walk away, the door starting to close behind her as she used her foot to close it. I'm going to go take a shower, and then go to bed, good luck tomorrow. Mina finished off as she leaned forward, depressed. Naruto stopped the door from closing. You know, we've been dating for almost a year now, and you've gotten a real handle on your quirk. With everything going on, I never got to suggest this to you, but want to have sex. I mean, not right now, but next chance we get, maybe on your birthday? We can make a date out of it. Naruto asked her as he held his shark back from trying to escape. I seriously love you. I'll be looking forward to it. Mina smiled again when she heard that. Wait, she hadn't trained even a little for the sports festival. Damn it. Chapter 38 Family Issues. General Studies, Business Studies, Support Studies, and Hero Studies. The 4 types of classes at UA, and the 4 types that would be allowed to partake in the yearly sports festival. For UA, an event that was broadcasted across the entire nation, and watched by many civilians and pro-hero agencies in the nation. It was the biggest place to make a statement, show off your ability, start gathering up a fan base, and begin making the connections that you would take with you to the top. Not only was it broadcasted nationwide, but the event itself took place in a massive stadium, where thousands were watching in person as well. For many, it would be a nerve-destroying time. For those wanting to get into the hero course, it was even more so. Usually, the only class with nothing on the line were the business courses, and they were usually only there to make connections in the business world. Naruto. Sup? Naruto looked as who was speaking to him as Class A walked into the stadium, and the audience roared their approval towards the class. The honest favorites to win overall, and make the best showing. Oh, you. Naruto saw it was Todoroki that was getting his attention. I'm going for you, and I want to beat you at your best. You better give it dash. Sorry, but I'm not going to use my quirk, so better aim for me another day. This is just going to be a chance to train for me. Naruto didn't care about the results of this dumb festival. He just wanted to grow stronger, so he was challenging himself by not using his quirk. He was going to try to win of course, but this was more about taking himself to a new level, than it was about caring for these games. Honestly, go after somebody else, I'm not going to be the outlet for your daddy issues. Naruto could see that look in Todoroki's eyes pretty easily, and he could tell that either Todoroki was doing this for his father, or he was doing this to spite his father. Either way, Naruto didn't want any part of it. Todoroki went silent. Oh thank God. By the way Naruto, if there is any fighting, and we have to fight, can you take it easy? Mina started, before Naruto placed his hand on her head. Mina, you're my girlfriend, and I love you, but if we have to fight, I'm kicking the shit out of you. This and that are 2 different things. Naruto wasn't going to go easy on anyone, he wasn't going to use his quirk, but he wasn't going to go easy. He hoped he didn't have to fight Mina, but if he did have to, he was going to punch her for sure. You want to become a hero too, so don't hold back on me either. Naruto told her with a grin. She held her horns. Just don't break them, I don't know if they grow back. She prayed that he didn't bust her horns if they fought. She had never broken them before, other than the occasional crack on them. The cracks would heal, but she had never broken one off, and she didn't want her head to look weirder with one broken horn. They all walked to their spots as Class A, and stood with the other classes as they walked in. Naruto looked at the other hero course, Class B, the only real threats he could see among any of the other students showing up. Those who were also trained in combat by pro heroes as well. At least, none of them seemed like they were any real threat towards him personally, quirk or no quirk. With the pro heroes. So, who is your favorite to win this? Either Endeavor's son, or Thunder God's son. I feel sorry for the rest, but I don't think it's going to be a competition. Death Arms stated as he looked at the TV screen with Mt. Lady and Kamui Woods. He had been lucky, and had not been one of the heroes who had been targeted by the freak of a villain not long ago. It hurt his pride a little, but he had been able to help control the flow of crime outbreaks as one of the few untargeted pros. Monster Fox and Half Hot Half Cold, those two quirks won't lose to a lot in combat, and I heard rumor that this year, there will be a tournament at the end. Death Arms walked towards the betting booth. This one of the very few forms of legal gambling that was allowed at the moment. He was going to make some money on this. I think that kid with the shadow has a good chance. Mt. Lady figured she would bet as well. She didn't know who she was going to bet on though. She got in line with Death Arms. Who are you betting on? Mt. Lady asked with a raised eyebrow. Todoroki. I think I'll bet on that Tokoyama boy. Mt. Lady had seen his power up close, so she might as well place her vote for him then. Wow, both of you are so stupid then. I'm going to bet on Naruto Uzumaki. They both looked and saw a girl standing in front of them in line, as the line got shorter and shorter. The girl was a tall one, standing around 180 centimeters tall. She had long blonde hair that was tied up inside ponytails, and she wore an orange hoodie, with black pants. Her blue eyes shined with malice, and she had a wicked grin on her face as she looked at the television screens showing all around. He's dangerous, a real monster. I wonder if he's going to rampage? I wonder what he looks like when he does. The girl's cheeks spread out into a wide smile, showing off the 3 whisker marks she had on each cheek. Rude. Mt. Lady stated, before she saw the girl get hit on the head. Quiet, we're not here to start a fight, we're here to watch this. A boy spoke this time, standing at also 180 centimeters in height. His hair was blonde, extremely spiky, and long enough to cover his eyes, and go to his shoulders. He wore pure black, a black tuxedo with a red tie. His cheeks were decorated with 3 whisker marks as well. On his right hand, he had a X mark, with the same thing being reflected on his other hand. I'm betting 30,000 yen on Naruto Uzumaki to win, without his quirk. The boy placed his bet, and put down the money in cash and passed it to the betting manager. He was given his paper slip to keep, and he walked out of the line. I'm betting 25,000 yen on Naruto Uzumaki to win, all 3 events, without his quirk. She upped the stakes of her bet. I'd bet 30,000 too, but I want to enjoy eating all the delicious food here. She spoke with a more cheery tone. She followed after him moments later. Weird kids. 1,510 on Todoroki to win at least one event. Death Arms wasn't a big spender for betting. He wasn't going to lower his odds of winning anything, but he wasn't going to win a lot either with the way he bet. The less likely the odds, the higher the earnings. With the weird kids. Come on brother, you're just as interested in watching our elder brother win as I am, considering he killed Momo. Cousin Tomura has been itching to add elder brother to our ranks. To think, we can have 2 monster foxes on our side if he joins us. Me and elder brother, and you with your teleport, we'll cause so much chaos. The girl spoke with a wide smile, her sharp canines showing as she whispered her menacing words. Naruto, we're here to spy on hero candidates, and earn money. Oh come on Menma, don't tell me you're not the least bit interested in how Naruto has grown after being raised by father's mortal enemy. Come on, you know you're curious. Naruto pushed her forehead against him. He pushed her off, and he scowled at the TV screen, seeing the members of Class A and Class B, the hero courses. After experiencing his first rampage, the darkness inside of Naruto has started growing, and his quirk will get stronger and stronger. Ha ha ha. Ah ha 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 ha. Naruto laughed loudly as she ignored all of the odd looks that she was getting. This was an amazing day. Menma was more wary of who was paying attention to them, though most people seemed to be willing to assume they were just kids who were in their own little world of delusions. Can you beat him? Menma asked quietly. Don't know, doesn't that make it fun though? Naruto just grinned wider, her eyes turning blood red as her teeth started to sharpen. She was so excited, that she actually started to transform. She calmed herself down though. Soon enough, she would unleash chaos. Chapter 39 The First Event. Obstacle Course. The more traditional first event of any sports festival, though for most high schools it was considerably far less important. For UA, only the 42 people who finished most quickly would be allowed to even try and take part in the events that came after the first event. It was a tournament of elimination, where one's running speed, balance abilities, and their abilities to analyze and take care of threats were all compared to one another. All of the classes started together, and their purpose was to run all around the stadium, starting inside of it in front of the small gates, before they ran around it and came back through the gates. The first obstacle is the gates. With so many people running through them at the same time, there will be crowding. I just have to be faster than everyone else. Naruto leaned down and placed his hands on the ground. No, even as he said that, Naruto wasn't starting at the front of the pack. He was starting near the back, so even with his speed, it would be hard for him to cover so much extra ground without hurting the other students. Hey, Uzumaki. Naruto ignored the male student voice that called out to him, since he didn't recognize who the voice belonged to. Cracking his neck by tilting his head, Naruto looked around for any advantage. He could use his quirk, and running all the way around the stadium would be easy. It would barely take more than a minute, if even that. That wouldn't be a challenge though, and right now, he wanted to challenge himself to see how far he could get without his quirk. To push himself to his limits, and go beyond them once more. If he allowed himself to take the easy way out in the competition, then that would just show how weak his resolve was. Good luck, Naruto. Kirishima started. Go. The crowd rushed towards the gates instantly, and Naruto trailed behind them as everyone got stuck. Jumping over the heads of the crowd, Naruto's feet touched the wall, before he jumped off the wall and landed on the other side of the crowd. Completely avoiding the crowd, after looking at the surrounding area, almost instantly placed Naruto in first as he cleared a considerable distance between himself as the competition. His longer, stronger, legs made his strides longer, and his bursts of speed more intense. And we already have our first two breakaway. Todoroki was following a distance behind him, freezing the ground around him and sticking a good number of students in place. Almost the entire business, support, and general studies were all frozen in place, with only Class A and Class B using their quirks and other abilities to get away from the ice and make any progress. He's fast. His quirk is strong, so I forget that even without using it, he's strong too. Todoroki looked at Naruto's back as the distance between them grew and grew. His quirk didn't make him faster or stronger, despite him having a stronger body than average thanks to his own father's training. Of course, even if Naruto didn't care about his declaration, he was still going to try his hardest to beat Naruto. What does he even know about father issues? He doesn't have. Todoroki stopped that line of thought, before he thought something he would feel shame for thinking. It wasn't Naruto's fault he had no parents, and holding that against Naruto was wrong, period. Still, Naruto's comment pissed him off. Tanya isn't caught up with me. I'm surprised. I expected more competition from him than anyone else here. Naruto was a little surprised he was in first place so far, and that Tanya, who had engines for legs, wasn't. Actually, Naruto was more surprised when he saw Izuku covering the distance by glancing back. The boy was actually using his quirk well, and increasing his speed to be able to cover a lot of distance in a short amount of time. Izuku felt his body creaking. Using 9% is killing me, it hurts, but I'm not breaking. I can maybe keep this up for 4 or 5 minutes before I hurt myself. Izuku looked at Naruto's back as he started to close the distance between them. He passed Todoroki, who looked at him with surprise for passing him, before he focused on Naruto. Naruto blinked to himself. With how much Izuku could use of One for All, it didn't make sense for him to be catching up, which could only mean he was going slower than he should be. Oh, I forgot to remove these, they must have been weighing me down. Naruto spoke out loud as he looked at the dense weights hanging from his arms, adding a lot of extra weight to his body. Running with them, just as Izuku got within 15 feet of him, Naruto took them off and tossed them to the ground. Better. Naruto started to up his speed far more than before, going almost twice as fast as before. Naruto sighed in relief at the loss of the extra weight, and when he glanced behind him, he saw Izuku looking surprised. The boy smiled though, weird. If I can catch up to Naruto, then I'll be worthy of this quirk. I'm sure of it. Ever since I started school, I've barely grown at all, but he hasn't stopped getting stronger. I can take more pain. Izuku pushed his quirk even further than before. Going from 9% all the way to 11%, and suddenly, the pain increased even more than before. He felt the creaking get worse, and it felt like his bones could break at any moment. Izuku grinned as wide as he could though, and even as Naruto continued to still get further away from him, though not as quickly as before, he saw Naruto glance back at him. Naruto grinned at him, a twinkle in his eye almost. Well damn. Here I thought my only competition was Tanya, but look at you Deku. Where was this you during training? Naruto asked loudly as he waved back at the younger teen. If he had seen this side of the boy when he was training, then he would have stuck around a lot longer than he did. He was curious about what changed, but that could wait. Naruto saw as giant robots blocked their path towards the next part of the race, and Naruto looked at them with a raised eyebrow. Not only them, but also the smaller robots on the ground as well. Giant, slow-moving, robots. Easy. He ran right around them, and going between their legs, as he cleared the robot portion of the race with incredible ease. When a robot stood in his way, he punched it and knocked it out of his way, denting the hard steel. His training with Kirishima paying off, giving his fists enough power to easily smash the robots, without hurting his fists in the process. One of the giant robots was frozen solid, no doubt Todoroki, but Naruto paid it no mind as he looked towards the giant pits with pieces of land sticking out of them. Ropes running from land to land, which would force people to slow down and crawl along the ropes or use their quirks in creative ways. Was this supposed to be a challenge? Didn't seem like it. Come on teachers. Is this all you got for me? Naruto jumped onto a rope and started to run across it. It was easy for him to run across the ropes without losing any of his speed. It looks like Class A's Naruto Uzumaki is once more undaunted by the challenges before him. Is there any stopping this unstoppable force? That's stupid. Naruto jumped from one rope to the next as he crossed land after land with little to no challenge. Now here, many students were actually fearful of passing over the ropes and ended up dropping out. For the most part, only the hero course were able to pass this part of the race. Still, for most of them, it was extremely difficult to do without losing a good amount of their speed. Seriously, unstoppable force? Maelstrom of strength sounds a lot cooler, way to make me sound so uncool present mic. Naruto idly spoke to himself as he thought about the commentary. With the ropes, the distance between him and the rest of the class was something that would make it hard for any of them to really hope to catch up. Physical exams, they were where he shined his brightest, where he could use his body to its utmost best. Let's just hope he finds this next part is. Boom. The second Naruto's foot touched the ground after the rope portion, the ground exploded in a pink cloud of pain. The commentary paused for a moment, before Naruto ran out of the cloud of smoke without any fear of damage. Naruto ran into explosion after explosion, none of them were lethal anyway, so he just ignored them and went full speed through them. Stopping and slowing down for nothing as his body was assaulted after boom, after boom, after boom. Explosive as we do. It seems like nothing will stop this. Maelstrom of strength. Maelstrom, not Maelstrom. Seriously, did you bite your tongue? Even when they get it right they somehow get it wrong. I should have left the weights on, then maybe this could have been a better workout. My morning run is harder than this. Naruto complained to himself as he crossed the finish line and entered the stadium again. Taking first place with relative ease. With Toshinori. That's my boy. Did you see him? That was Dash. Toshinori, surrounded by other teachers, quickly toned himself down. When he realized they were all sending him strange looks, He rubbed the back of his head with a small smile. He knew he was supposed to remain impartial because everyone were students, but seeing his nephew take first place, and seeing Izuku about to take second place, just made him really happy. He had trouble containing his enthusiasm for their success, even more so when he saw that Izuku seemed to have found something very important. His competitive spirit. On that screen, he had seen something in the boy's eyes when he looked at Naruto, a desire to improve himself further, to push his body to the limits to catch up with somebody. He hadn't seen that look in the boy's eyes since he had been cleaning up the beach. It was like Izuku had lost some of his motivation, but now, he was seeing that twinkle in those eyes again. He wondered what inspired this change. With Naruto. Ha, ha, ha. You did pretty good there, Deku, happy to see you pushing yourself so hard. Here, have a drink, you worked up a sweat. Naruto passed Izuku a water bottle, grin on his face, when the boy passed the finish line a little bit after him. Todoroki passed by a little bit after Izuku, with a pissed-off Bakugo passing after him as well. In fact, Bakugo was glaring absolute death at Izuku even more than usual. He's beaten me, again, and again, how does that runt keep doing it? Izuku smiled wide when he saw Naruto grin down at him. I'm going to beat you, Naruto. I'm aiming for the top, thanks for showing me your back. Izuku extended his hand to Naruto. Todoroki raised an eyebrow, considering he had made a similar declaration to Naruto, and had been ignored and insulted for it. He watched as Naruto looked at Izuku in some surprise, before he grinned wider. Well, look at you. Looks like you've finally started walking the path of a top hero. Fine, I'm accepting your challenge then. Naruto grabbed Izuku's hand and shook it with a softer smile. He was happy that Izuku was finally trying to grow stronger for the right reasons again, and he was fine with competing with the boy whenever he wanted so long as he was using it as a way to better himself as a person. Todoroki's eyes widened in shock. He ignored me, what makes Midoriya's declaration different than mine? Todoroki looked at Izuku with a narrowed gaze. What made him so special? Chapter 40 The Second Event. This, not good for me. The Cavalry Battle, the second event of the sports festival. The 42 students who had made it through the first event would be paired into multiple groups of 4, with 2 groups of 3 students, or 1 group of 2, based on their own decisions. The students could team up with anyone that they wanted to, and they form horses, for one person to ride on them and wear a headband. The headband would have a point total on it, and considering the places you placed in the first event, those totals would be added up, and the rider would wear that total. The goal was to take the headbands of other students, and add their totals to your own. Naruto's point value was 10 million. Basically, nobody wanted to team up with him, purely because they wanted to target him and take his points. Hey Naruto, want to team up? Hey Toru, sure. You want to be the rider? Naruto didn't think the girl would be able to support his body weight easily, unless the other person or people that joined them was pretty strong. Not to mention, if she stripped naked, then that put them at a pretty good advantage if she was the rider. Stealing others' headbands, and making it harder for somebody to steal their own. He wasn't sure how to ask her, naturally, but it wasn't like anyone would see her naked. I'm surprised you haven't teamed up with Kirishima or Mina, but sure, I'll ride you. Toru exclaimed brightly. Naruto hummed. Mina and Kirishima had been taken by somebody else before they could join up with him. Izuku wanted to face off against him, the same with most of the others he believed he could count on. Shoji had teamed up with Tsuyu and a boy from Class B, Minetta, or something, which didn't leave him with a bunch of people to go with. He was not about to team up with Class B, which didn't leave him a lot to work with. Not to mention he had seen Mei around, and he didn't want to team with her. Is there room open for one more? The classy voice called to them. Yeo Momo. Toru welcomed Momo to their group with her nickname. Didn't Todoroki try and recruit you? Naruto asked as he looked over at Todoroki, and saw that he had switched out Momo for another person. He looked over at Naruto, and the two of them locked eyes. Naruto ignored him though and looked over at Izuku, and then at Bakugo who had Mina and Kirishima. Momo smiled. We're forbidden from being on a team together in class because it's unfair, so being with you right now gives me the best chance of winning. Momo stated, since all she would have to do is make sure the points Naruto added to the team were safe. They didn't even need to go after other teams, they just needed to keep a firm hold on their own points for everything to work out well. Hagakure, are you okay with being naked as the rider? Momo asked it for Naruto, since she had her own ideas on what she wanted to do to make sure they won. Naruto raised an eyebrow, curious. -10 minutes later. This looks stupid, and it's kind of embarrassing too. This is the best possible formation. Momo stated as she placed her hands at Naruto's waist, standing behind him as she did. Toru was sitting butt naked on Naruto's shoulders, so all of the strain of holding her would fall to him, since he was more than capable of handling it. If she just held on to Naruto in same way, their horse formation was considered complete, and she could have full access to her quirk as well. She had unzipped her gym uniform so that her bra was visible, not really caring about such a minor level of exposure. With all of her stomach exposed, she would be able to use her quirk a lot better than before. The only thing that even made Toru visible was the fact she had 15 headbands wrapped around her forehead and neck, 14 of which were fake, and had the word fake hidden on the inside of them. Momo had created a lot of copies of their group headband, so that they could drastically lower the chances of anyone being comfortable stealing it from them. Since nobody would know when Toru was reaching for their headband, and they had no clue of when they were reaching for the correct headband as well. Just approaching them alone was highly dangerous, with their Naruto tank being they could ram into other horses with no fear, and their Momo support allowing them to create items that could counteract almost any other quirk. Why am I not wearing a shirt? Naruto asked, since he too wasn't wearing a shirt. His quirk wasn't helped by him being nude like Momo and Toru, who could only really use their quirks to their best ability while nearly nude or naked. Fanservice, I'm naked, and Yeo Momo's boobs cute bra is visible, so we have to balance it out for the girls in the audience. It's only fair. Toru shouted out as she beat him over the head playfully. Intimidation, you're not a small person, so showing your muscles can be a form of intimidation. Momo reasoned it a little better. Go. You're ours. Momo and Naruto jumped backwards as Toru stole the headband from one of the teams from Class B, and Momo put her right hand on her stomach, and she hid what she created. Tossed it to the ground in between them, Toru covered Naruto's heads as he closed his eyes. A blinding light and resounding sound filled the immediate area around them, and Momo and Naruto escaped in the confusion. Opening his eyes, Naruto started to run towards one of the other teams that was nearby. Ah! They then ran by two more teams and did the same time, blinding and deafening them, before stealing their headbands in the blink of an eye and escaping. They didn't stop running around either, as Naruto and Momo were athletic, and had the stamina to always stay moving around without fear of exhaustion. I'm coming for you, Naruto. Momo, anti-Deku formation. Toru shouted out her command when she saw Izuku on his 3 horse members running towards them. She was surprised Bakugo wasn't after them right away, but then again, she looked where he was and saw that he was busy with another team. Momo on the other hand, got to work right away. She saw that Tokoyami, Ochako, the support class girl were the horse. He teamed up with Ochako and Tokoyami like you thought. Momo was their brains. Forming high-density weights, she based them to Naruto, who tossed them in the direction of Izuku and his team. She formed several more flash grenades and tossed them after Naruto did. The second Tokoyami brought out Dark Shadow, the being was forced to retreat right back into Tokoyami. The weights started to attach themselves to Izuku, Tokoyami, and Mei when they hit, fastening much harder, severely slowing them down to the point they were having trouble staying in formation, and they just kept adding more and more weight to the opposing team. Sorry Deku, no hard feelings. I've got the weights everyone, I'll make you weightless. Ochako shouted as she touched each of the members of her team. Instantly, the second she used her quirk she came to regret it. Her face grew more and more pale, since she wasn't wearing her suit to help deal with the nasty side effects of her quirk, her limits were much lower, and the dense weights increasing everyone's weights just made everything worse for them. A small green glass ball broke in front of her, thrown by Momo, and suddenly a very foul smell made itself known to them. Don't smell it dash. Bar fing sounds. The horse formation was broken, and Izuku went falling with his team. knocked out of the competition completely, with Toru stealing their headband on the way down. Passing by them, Naruto shared a glance with Izuku and nodded his head. Izuku frowned and looked down in shame, being knocked out of the competition completely, when he had declared to Naruto that he would face him head-on. "Good plan Yao Momo, and good muscle Naruto," Toru shouted, since these plans were only able to work because of Momo's brain being capable of such plans, and Naruto's brawn being able to follow through on them. With her stealth ability making her able to steal headbands with ease, and all of their fake headbands, they were almost the perfect formation. Momo smiled, and Naruto smirked. "We're Dash Momo started. Team Dash Naruto continued. Fan service," Toru shouted out as she tried to complete the team name. Naruto and Momo looked at her like she was an idiot, since that was not the team name they had agreed on. In the stands. What a frightening combination. Toshinori shivered when he thought about how terrible it would be if Momo and Naruto ever turned villain together. Thankfully, there were no chances of that ever happening. Momo's ability to plan for most things, and Naruto's ability to take control over nearly any situation, combined with their excellent teamwork and the way they covered each other's weaknesses was just terrifying to think of going against. This was exactly the reason why they weren't allowed to fight against the other students on a team. They wouldn't grow as students if they just defeated their fellow students with ease, and the other students would grow after being easily defeated, but in this official competition, there was nothing stopping Naruto and Momo from teaming up. He's yet to reveal his quirk, but the efficiency those three are showing makes me wonder how they could be marketed. Surely, their stock will rise as heroes. Some things never chance. The business course dropped out, and now they're running simulations over how to market the other students. Toshinori knew that the business course was vital to the growth of heroes in the business sense. Back with Naruto/Momo/Toru. Wahahahaha. She's getting way too into this. Momo looked up at Toru as she stole yet another headband and added it to their vastly growing collection of them. They, as a team, were able to make almost every horse formation fall to the ground after grabbing their headbands, and had taken out most of the other teams. As it stood, only 5 teams including themselves, were still standing on the field. Team Naruto, Team Bakugo, Team Todoroki, Team Minoma, and Team Tsuyu. Team Bakugo will still fighting against Team Minoma, so they weren't a threat. Team Tsuyu were using Shoji's tentacles to hide the small people inside from being visible, so they were safe from most people at the moment. Team Todoroki were standing by, watching everything happen, with a few extra headbands of their own. If we approach them, we might be eliminated, damn it. Todoroki thought as he looked at Naruto and Momo, the 2 key parts of the team. I think we're done collecting headbands right now, let's retreat back. Only a few minutes left. Momo pointed out to Naruto, whispering it into his ear. Naruto frowned and looked at the rest of the competition, before he nodded his head. Creating a smoke bomb, Momo let it fall to the ground and explode, cover them in a large amount of smoke. Several flash grenades were thrown out of the smoke, blinding anyone who was looking in their direction, and the smoke started to spread as Momo created more smoke bombs. They had secured themselves in first place, so now it was best to retreat in a way nobody could come after them, with blinding lights and massive amounts of smoke. Ha! Got it back you bastards. Now, I'm taking out Fox Face. Bakugo got his headband, and Team Minoma's headband, and secured it around his neck. He looked across the field, and saw a massive amount of smoke filling half of the field itself. Fine, then that icy hot bastard. Bakugo got ready to run towards Todoroki's team. The buzzer sounded. The second event was over. Team Naruto, Momo, Toru. Team Todoroki, Denki, Tanya, Sato. Team Bakugo, Mina, Kirishima, Siro. Team Tsuyu, Shoji, Minetta, yes, he is in Class B. Chapter 41 A Different Style. Cheerleaders? Americans too. Naruto noticed out of the side of his eye, while he was eating his lunch, they were being given a break, that cheerleaders from the American UA branch were going to go and get their own lunches. It would be about an hour or 2 until the next big event would start, so all of the students were being given a break to chow down on something, and maintain their energy for their fights. Since the last big event was going to be a massive tournament, a tournament that would include all of those who had won the second event. For once, Naruto was actually enjoying his lunch alone, seeing as his closest friends were all in the tournament with him, and they thinking on their own strategies to use against each other. Uzumaki Naruto, may I eat with you? Sure, take a seat, doesn't bother me. Naruto glanced up and saw a shorter, red-haired boy sit down across from him with a far more modest lunch than Naruto himself was eating. He had a somewhat similar haircut to him, but his body was far less toned, showing he wasn't part of the hero course. With how he was smartly dressed, even in his gym uniform, Naruto would guess he was part of the business course. What ya want? Naruto asked as he, for the most part, actually ignored the boy and continued to enjoy his own meal. He could eat with him, but Naruto wasn't interested in talking business. I'm Sabukagara, a pleasure to meet you. Your performance in the first two events was a marvel to behold. I'll start with. Get to the point. Naruto wasn't going to be having any of that. Gaara nodded his head, before he passed Naruto a card with his name and contact information on it. Naruto looked at it, and saw that it was pretty nice. Gaara dropped any pretense he had before, and put on a far less emotional face. When it is time to graduate, I believe that we could do business together. You seem like the type to start up your own agency, instead of being a sidekick, so I believe it would be best to give this to you now. Have a good meal. With that, the boy was gone, leaving Naruto to think about what he had said. Naruto waited until he was out of sight, before he put the card in his pocket, and stopped thinking about the boy. Hey Naruto dash. I can, and will, stab you if this isn't good Denki. Naruto lifted his fork up, and showed it to Denki with a threatening glance. This was twice now that he was going to be interrupted while eating, and he didn't like to be interrupted from his meals. Denki raised his hands up, before he sat down next to Naruto and wrapped an arm around his shoulders. Naruto raised an eyebrow. Those cheerleaders passed by here just now, right? You know, the American-looking girls. Don't you think that Class A would really experience a raise in morale if our girls were to don those attractive outfits themselves? Denki tried to sound smart. Naruto looked at him with a deadpan. Toru might agree to it, but I doubt the others would. Mina and Ochako would have fun, after you got them to agree, but there is no way that Kyoka would enjoy it. Not sure about Momo or Tsuyu, but good luck getting them all to agree. Naruto stated to the boy as he went back to eating, deciding to ignore this stupid conversation. His mind drifted for a moment, and he imagined all of the girls in cheerleading outfits. Though they would look nice. Naruto admitted after a moment, and Denki grinned a little and nodded his head. His plan could work. Naruto, just the man I wanted to see. Mina, I'm not going to not beat you up if we fight each other. Naruto reminded her when she came to sit down. She gulped at the reminder that there was a chance that they would have to fight, before she sighed, and nodded her head. Denki suddenly paled a little, since there was a girl there, and that wouldn't bode well for his plan. It would seriously ruin his cool guy reputation to be heard saying perverted stuff. After lunch, it looks like there are going to be cheerleaders doing a show to keep spirits up. Think you can convince the other girls to join in on that? Naruto asked her nonchalantly, since once more, he wasn't really in a position to be asking any of the other girls to do that. Mina thought on it. Those uniforms are cute, and if I'm a cheerleader, I get to dance on national TV. Why the other girls though? Mina actually kind of liked Naruto bringing up the idea in such a calm way. Now that she looked at the cheerleaders that were eating, she was seeing how cute the uniform was, and thinking on how great it would be and Naruto saw her dancing in the uniform. Not to mention, she always kind of wanted to try cheerleading too, since it looked like it was really fun. You're not allowed to perv on other girls, only me. You're already on thin ice for having Toru naked on you. Mina poked Naruto's cheek. Denki registered those words, and remembered how seeing that. Toru was on Naruto's shoulders, but naked, their bodies touching skin to skin. I wish I was you. Denki spoke with a self-loathing frown, since his body wasn't strong enough to support a naked girl, hide his boner, and fight all at the same time. Otherwise he would have wished to be in Naruto's position. Denki brought it up, and I thought the girls might have fun if they gave it a chance. Some of them lost pretty badly in the second event, and this could be fun for them. Ochako threw up on national television, she kind of needs this to get her image back as a cute girl. Naruto spoke his thoughts a little, and both Mina and Denki winced when they realized that she did do that. The girl had been really depressed since lunch started, 1 for losing in such a way, and 2 for throwing up on TV. She needed something to help her relax, since she was out of the third event. Ahahaha. I am here, to ask you to eat lunch with me. Sure thing, All Might, see you guys later. Naruto stood up and walked after his uncle. -30 minutes later. Toshinori couldn't help but look at Naruto in pride as they ate a rather silent lunch together in private. All he wanted to do was talk with Naruto, and eat lunch with him, nothing more really. Since they had sort of gotten a little out of touch, since Naruto moved into the dorms and gotten himself a girlfriend and other friends. So, you're not using your quirk for this? Nope, I'm going to see how far I can go without it. Anyway, the other schools are watching right now, aren't they? Naruto asked with a knowing look on his face. He knew this wasn't just for show, and that others were going to see how this tournament went. At first, he really did just want to do this for training. All my classmates might know what my quirk is, but for the rest of the world, they don't know my quirk is Monster Fox. When the time comes, I can use that to my advantage. Naruto said with a grin on his face. When it was time to test to see if he could get a provisional license, and competed against other schools, it would be best if those other schools didn't know what his quirk was, so he wasn't going to use his quirk for this sports festival. Your parents would be happy to see you doing this well. Toshinori spoke with a bright smile. They would have loved to see Naruto doing so well, and having fun, during these events. Naruto smiled and looked out the window, seeing some of the other classes doing more traditional events in the stadium. None of the events were really that important, or noteworthy, but they were being active and healthy. You're growing stronger and stronger, and you'll keep getting stronger. Right now, you're stronger than the average pro hero, but don't let your strength go to your head. I just want to make sure you remember that. I thought I was invisible, and it cost me. Toshinori started to lecture Naruto. Naruto glanced at him, before he sighed, and nodded his head. He had something he wanted to say, but he didn't want to hurt his uncle's feelings with it. After this, the internships are coming up. I think you should send Deku to Super Gramps for training. Right now Deku can handle 9% of 1 for all, a little more if he goes above his limits without breaking, but he is trying to copy you still. He needs to find his own fighting style, or he won't be able to ever truly gain a mastery over 1 for all. Naruto gave his uncle a little advice as well. He had noticed a lot of things about Deku, but the biggest thing that was holding the boy back from ever realizing his potential, was the fact that he idolized All Might so much. Said person shivered in fear. Is it because I'm not a good dash? Of course it's because you're a shitty teacher. You dem genius types suck at teaching, because everything came naturally to you, so you bastards don't know what it means to struggle to get stronger. Naruto pointed at his uncle and started to shout. Naruto took a calming breath, before sitting back down and looking a little more serious. It's not your fault though. You and Deku are two very different people. Before your injury, your true form was just a little smaller than your muscle form, your fighting style always relied on those big muscles to deliver punches. Deku is different, he comes from a smaller family, he isn't going to be all big and muscly. He needs to find his own fighting style, and he can't do that learning from you. He needs to experience other teachers, with different styles, and find the one that fits him best, or make his own like I did. Naruto knew from experience what it was like trying to find your own style that fit. Naruto had trained in over a dozen different forms of martial arts over his lifetime, trying to find the type that fit him, and in the end, he didn't like any of them because none of them were something he could have used in both his human and fox forms. In the end, he had to take apart all of those fighting styles, and combine them into his own original style of fighting. He can learn that from you though. Toshinori pointed out, and Naruto frowned. He's different than me too, and I want him to get stronger, because he is the one you chose to inherit your title. Naruto glanced at Toshinori with a smile. He will be a great hero, but he is still lacking in a lot of areas. Right now, he isn't ready to compete with me. Now, I'm going to go and see how things are going down there. They should be showing the tournament lineup any minute now. Naruto got up and looked down into the arena. In the arena, minutes later. Oh, thank God, I'm not fighting first round. Mina said with a sigh of relief. Her opponent was the only person from Class B to pass, that Minetta boy, so she wasn't worried about it in the slightest. It was only if she won her match, that she was going to have to fight Naruto, provided that Naruto won his match as well. Considering that Naruto was going to be going up against Tsuyu as his first opponent. Be gentle with the girl, Naruto. Actually, I would appreciate it if you didn't. If you can you show me some of your frog kata when we fight? So I can get hands-on experience facing it. Before Naruto could even respond, Tsuyu walked up behind him and added her 2 cents in. She didn't want Naruto holding back anything against her, she knew she might not win or anything like that, but she wanted to use this as a learning experience. That way she could adjust, and do better next year, and prepare herself for her future even more. Naruto raised an eyebrow. He was cool with that. Match lineups. 1 Mina vs Minetta. 2 Naruto vs Tsuyu. 3 Momo vs Sato. 4 Siro vs Kirishima. 5 Todoroki vs Toru. 6 Shoji vs Denki. 7 Bakugo vs Tanya. Chapter 42 Froggy gets frogged. Healthy body, nice boobs, big butt and hips, small waist, this girl is thick. For some reason, I'm going to enjoy punching you a little, might be the look you have on your face, kind of pervy. Mina stated as she loosened up her arms. She was up first and foremost, against Class B's only student who was making it to the final rounds. A student who had no pride apparently, and had teamed up with both Shoji and Tsuyu or Class A. Looking into the closest audience stands, she could see how disappointed Class B was with who they had made it to this round, so it would seem that Minetta wasn't a very popular guy. Seems like it was Naruto who eliminated his entire class, other than that copycat guy. Kind of feel sorry for them. Mina's private thoughts apparently didn't translate so well on her face. Fight. Take this. Minetta shouted as he plucked one of his balls from his head off, and threw it towards her. Blinking, she caught it with both of her hands, since the boy didn't have a very fast throw. She was about to throw it back, but she found that she couldn't remove it from her hands. Wait, what? Mina couldn't take her hands off of the ball, even though she wanted to. So when the boy threw another at her, she started to dodge out of the way of them. His balls would stick on the ground wherever they landed, reducing the amount of free space she had. Several ways to win. Knock the opponent out, injure them enough to be unable to continue, render them unable to move, or toss them out of the ring. If this boy got her with those balls on her legs, and made her unable to run around or use her hands, then she would lose by default. If I accidentally grab her boob or butt in a fight, that's okay, right? Minetta thought as he started to run towards Mina. Oh right, my quirk is acid. Mina realized as she stopped moving, and made acid come out of her palms. She melted the part of the ball that she was sticking against, before she shook the acid from her hands, balled them up into a fist. Unable to stop himself from moving forward in time, Minetta took both of her fists like a hammer, right into his face when he jumped towards her. His extremely small body went flying out of the stage, after he bounced off of the balls that he touched when he landed on the ground. Wow, seems like he doesn't stick to those balls. My win, I guess. Are you okay, little guy? Mina called out to the hurt boy. She had knocked him one pretty good after all. She might not have strength like Naruto or some of the other strong guys in her class, but her physical strength was second only to Momo among the girls in her class. She was even above a lot of the boys in her class, again not counting those with really trained bodies, when it came to her raw strength. The little guy never stood a chance after getting hit directly. The winner of the first round by knockout and ring out is Mina Ashido, next up is Naruto Uzumaki and Tsuyu Ajui, both of Class A. Naruto vs Tsuyu. How will this mistress of slime take on this titan of fur dash? Oh my god, these introductions are horrible. Naruto stated with a roll of his eyes. He had his hands in his pockets, while Tsuyu was hunched over, mouth slightly open so that she could start this on her terms, as soon as the match started. Fight! Her tongue shot out of her mouth and went right towards Naruto, and like lightning, his hand came out of his pocket and caught her tongue. Forming an extremely tight grip on her tongue, enough so that she had no chance to pull it back into her mouth, Naruto pushed his foot firmly into the ground. He grinned though, she hadn't even hesitated for a moment in launching that attack at him. Even now, her tongue was struggling to lift him up into the air, but he was standing firmly in place, pushing his entire weight into the ground. His reflexes are really good, I knew that much, but I didn't expect him to be this strong without his quirk. Tsuyu jumped up into the air and grabbed her tongue. She pulled on it, winced when she did too, and went flying towards Naruto. She positioned herself, and he sidestepped out of the way when she kicked the ground he had been standing on with both of her feet. The cement actually cracked a little, both of her legs enhanced to stronger than normal levels, thanks to her frog quirk. Now in close range, she turned around and placed her hands on the ground, before she kicked at him once more. She needed to make him let go of her tongue. Naruto dodged out of the way and gripped his fist tightly. He had the perfect shot, right at the side of her head, and he was pretty good at guessing how much force it would take to knock a person out without causing serious damage. He unclenched his fist though when Tsuyu pulled her legs back and punched, so Naruto let go of her tongue. Opening his palm up, he remembered what he had told her he was going to do. He swung his leg in low, using his shin to smash her forearm, and send her tumbling across the ground. He was going to show her the frog kata. Ribbit, ow. Tsuyu landed on her side, her arm had not taken that hit well. She was going to have a very large bruise once the match was over with, and more so than that, she was afraid her arm might be a little broken from that. You really don't hold back, do you? Tsuyu got back on all fours as quickly as she could, and she saw Naruto take up a stance she had never once seen before in her life. Then again, she wasn't a martial artist, so she didn't know what to think of this. In the stance. She's dead. Naruto's about to really go to town on her. Kirishima saw Naruto switch stances into the frog kata, recognizing it from his sparring matches with Naruto. He's a good guy though, he won't hurt a girl, right? Ochako asked with a small, hopeful smile. She's dead. Naruto versus Tsuyu. You want to be a hero, well villains won't hold back because you're a girl, so I'm not going to either. Anything I do to you can be fixed by recovery girl, and if a little pain stops you from becoming a hero, then you can't be trusted with the lives of those who depend on you. Now, I'm going to come at you, don't die. That was his only warning to her, and the next thing Tsuyu knew, she was dodging a kick aimed at her face. She watched, ducked down, as the kick soared over her head, and she could feel the wind touch her face as it passed. Her eyes tracked the kick as it moved, but then, Tsuyu felt a horrible pain in her cheek as she was sent flying by something she didn't see. She landed in a standing position, before Naruto was already on her, and he swung his right arm at her. She leaned back to dodge it, and she even opened her mouth to counter with her tongue. Then, once more, she was punched by an attack that she wasn't able to see until it had hit her like a truck. Naruto's punch got her right in the chest, between her boobs, and she folded over his fist. She was lifted into the air, and Naruto jumped, pulling his fist out of her sternum and replacing it with a knee to her chin. She landed on her back, rolling around as she tried to find a way to breathe, the wind knocked out of her lungs. How? Naruto got back into stance, and waited for her to get up. It was a literal few minutes before she caught her breath, and stood back up, blood dripping from her split lip. One of his punches from earlier had broken the skin, or was it a kick? She didn't know to be honest. I need to see how he does that, it is like each of his attacks is backed up by some kind of invisible attack. Tsuyu jumped towards Naruto full speed, and lashed her tongue out at him. He gripped his right fist, and she watched as he leaned towards his right side. Keeping her eyes completely focused on his right hand, the gripped fist, and even twisting her tongue to wrap around him, she was hit by was a powerful force that struck her from Naruto's left side. Her eyes darted to the direction of the pain, and she saw Naruto's left hand with an open palm, right against her cheek just before she was sent flying. It hurt, a lot, his attack had thrown her for a complete loop. Naruto grabbed her tongue before she could pull it back into her mouth, and he yanked her back towards him. Frog strike. She felt an ungodly force hit her, right her and left breast, right above her heart. Everything went black. In the stands. She's out. That was his frog strike. I know firsthand how much that sucks. I've never taken one of those and stayed awake before. Kirishima rubbed his chest as he remembered the times he had been hit by that one himself. Tsuyu, on stage, was instantly out like a light. Several students were leaning over the edge of the railings, many with worried looks. She'll be fine. Naruto's frog strike takes Naruto's physical strength, and then he attacks in a way that sends a shock of force through the entire body. By hitting the heart, the attack does damage to everything except the point Naruto hits. Meaning since he hits the heart, this attack will never damage the heart. Kirishima explained the technique to his classmates. It was a technique that if Naruto ever messed up, had the chance to cause a person's heart to stop or worse, rupture. Naruto could only ever use it when he was completely sure that he was going to hit a person's heart with it. She's going to be okay, like really okay. Denki showed some real worry as Naruto picked Tsuyu up off of the ground, and gave her to the medics to take away. The girl wasn't showing any signs of waking up, and while Naruto was declared the winner, the audience was a little stunned. To them, Tsuyu looked dead. She's alive, just knocked out. Oh thank God. Ochako collapsed in her seat, and she wasn't the only one. Most of the class had been really worried about their frog girl. Watching her just up and look like she died had nearly given them a heart attack. She's lucky, this could have been a lot more embarrassing. Kirishima blushed when he remembered the first time he got hit by that attack. Tsuyu must have used the bathroom before she got on the stage, because if you got hit by that and knocked out with a full bladder, then the attack could cause a person to piss their pants. Kirishima had learned, from experience, that he needed to always use the bathroom before training with Naruto. She's going to be hurting for a couple of days though. Even after getting a recovery girl healing, I'm still usually left sore after that. He still hasn't used his quirk, he's just fucking with us, are we not even on his fucking radar? Bakugo shouted as he looked down towards Naruto walking off of the stage. This bastard was toying with them. Chapter 43 Surprising Outcomes. Hurt. Tsuyu's entire body hurt when she started to open her eyes a little. She didn't have a blurry memory or anything like that, she could clearly remember exactly what happened to her. She had lost to Naruto in their match, and had been put through the ringer. Tsuyu tried to sit up, but her body wasn't responding to her commands. The most she was able to move was her head, and a little of her upper body. The blanket that was covering her shifted a small amount, until a hand grabbed it and pulled it back up on her, covering her up again. It will take another hour or two before you can move normally. Recovery girl took your clothes off to wrap up your chest. See. Naruto lifted up the sheets in a way that Tsuyu would be able to see, but he wouldn't. She tilted her head a little and glanced down, and while she was wearing pants thankfully, her shirt had been taken off in favor of bandages being put on her chest. The arm Naruto kicked had a giant, nasty bruise on it, the bandages on her arm only partially covering it up. I'm sorry, I should have held back a little. Naruto dropped the sheet on her body. He bowed to her, his forehead against the bed she was on. In the match between the Creation Queen and the powerhouse of sugar, Yaoyorozu takes the win. You didn't hold back, did you? Thank you. Of course I didn't hold back, you're tough. I promised to show you the frog kata. Do you still want to learn? Naruto asked her, partially the reason why he stayed with her while she was taken to Recovery Girl. If she wanted to learn his froggy way of combat, then he would teach her how to do it. Tsuyu turned her head to look at him, before she nodded her head. Yes, when you threw those attacks, you were able to hit me with invisible attacks, how? Tsuyu really wanted to ask him that. She hadn't been able to truly dodge any of his attacks that entire fight thanks to the way he had moved. I never saw those second attacks coming. Tsuyu commented with a blank face, though her face was always mostly blank to be honest. She was curious how he did it anyway though. She saw Naruto clench his fist, his right one, and the second her eyes were drawn to it, Naruto's left hand covered her eyes before she was able to see it coming. When frogs hunt, they don't always use their tongues. I noticed that a frog always jumps on its prey the second it looks away from it, distracted by something else. The way a frog moves their body also makes it harder for people to notice them. Naruto spoke as he pulled his hand back from her. The frog kata was just a style that focused on diversions and strong, hard to track, attacks that followed them if a person was being simple about it. Tsuyu looked up at the ceiling and thought on Naruto's words, trying to put them together. It takes being still, and being active, and combines them to form rough, rugged movements with calm and smooth transitioning attacks. Naruto explained it as he did it again. Tsuyu saw Naruto jerk his left arm, and the second her eyes looked at it, for even a second, Naruto's right forearm was against her neck. Her eyes naturally jerked back to where his other arm was, after the fact. She understood it better now, but understanding it and doing it, or even avoiding it, were a lot harder. Now, watch as the redundant hero himself goes against the face of tape. Seriously, present Mike should not be the announcer. He keeps giving people dumb titles. Naruto complained with a grin. Redundant, that was kind of funny. Naruto dash. The match only lasted for a second, before Siro threw Kirishima out of the ring with a surprise tape attack. The quickest match yet. Wow, Kirishima lost to Siro. Pretty sure Todoroki is going to finish Toru in a second too, no offense to her, but the gap in their abilities is too big for her to cross right now. Naruto hated to admit it, but either Todoroki or Bakugo were the most likely people for him to fight in the final rounds. He was surprised that Siro was making it past round 1, considering Kirishima was strong. He had never really paid much attention to Siro though. He must have been more skilled than he was given credit for, but a surprise tape attack wouldn't work against whoever his next opponent was. Todoroki vs Toru. Where did she go? Todoroki froze a small amount of random stage as he looked around for Toru. He couldn't afford to use any big attacks, since he could accidentally kill her, or freeze her completely solid. The second the match had started, the girl had pulled her clothes off and went completely silent. It was just like during the USJ attack, when she had apparently been in the same area as he had been, and he never even noticed her. The girl, when not running her mouth, was extremely adept at stealth when naked, thanks to her quirk. He froze another small part of the stage in front of him, and quickly turned to do it again, trying to find the girl as quickly as he could. His ice wasn't great at finding her though, because of how much of a risk it would be to accidentally kill or seriously injure her. She was taking advantage of how easily his quirk could kill. That, or she was just lucky, and she had just planned to stealth him off of the stage. I've almost got him. Toru's shirt on the ground moved a little bit to the right, and Todoroki used this as his chance. Instantly, his ice crossed the stage, and froze the jacket and everything to the fight of the jacket, up to a height of 2 feet. With her speed, there would have been no way for her to avoid that. Todoroki wins, after a surprisingly long match for him. If I used my other side, finding her would have been, no. Never in a fight. Todoroki thought as he got off of the stage. Hey Todoroki, I'm not frozen. Hello. The entire crowd was silent. Their cheers for him ended as Toru's pants, floating in the air as she waved them above herself, showed that she was several feet to the left of his ice. Todoroki's eyes widened in surprise, shock, at the fact that the girl had been able to fool him into thinking she had just been clumsy and tripped over her shirt. Toru started to put her pants and shoes back on. After new information, it seems like the verdict will be redone. Toru wins due to Todoroki leaving the ring. Midnight, just as shocked as anyone else in the stadium, shouted into a mic. She had put him as a favorite to win the entire thing, with a quirk as strong as his was. It was hard to believe that he had lost to such a simple strategy, against a girl whose quirk wasn't exactly built for straight-on combat. Change of announcement, Toru wins. What, but? I was confident I froze her legs in place. Damn it. I need to take some time to cool my head. Todoroki growled in self-anger. He had allowed his annoyance with Naruto ignoring him, to cloud his judgment against Toru. When Present Mike had announced his victory, he had just taken it at face value, and neglected to check to make sure he had actually frozen her. I won, really. I won. Toru started to jump for joy, her visible pants showing her actions. The crowd didn't cheer, they were just mostly still in shock. With Naruto. Ribbit. I know, I'm surprised too. I guess luck is pretty important to being a hero. I guess. Naruto didn't know a lot of what happened, but he was pretty sure that Toru got super lucky there. He hadn't expected her to pull a win out of her ass though, no matter how lucky she was. Anyway, I'm going to go and watch them, I was just here to make sure you were okay. Take it easy Tsuyu. Naruto rubbed the top of her head, and grinned down at her. You're like a dad ribbit. Pfft. Naruto spewed the air he was breathing when she said that. He hadn't been expecting her to saw something so off the wall like that. It was literally out of nowhere, but the girl just spoke her mind. I'm sorry, what? Naruto asked as he quickly tried to regain his composure. She looked up. Or a brother. I thought you were really scary when I saw you. I was wrong though, you're really nice. Whenever anyone asks for help, you always try to help them. You're very dependable. You would make a very good big brother. Tsuyu just spoke as she looked at him. Over the course of their time together in school, she had lost her opinion on him as this man who was unapproachable and scary. Now, it was hard to even relate her first impression of him as a big grumpy guy, to the kind and caring figure that took great care of others. So adorable. Tsuyu thought as she watched Naruto's cheeks turn red. He forced himself to look away from her, but his eyes kept glancing back. So this was his embarrassed face. Shut up, your head must be injured more than I thought. I better get recovery girl back in here. Naruto quickly got up and started to leave the room, as quickly as possible. Really adorable. Tsuyu couldn't help the thought. She didn't know that Naruto was this bad at accepting such genuine compliments from others that he wasn't expecting. She could consider this her little revenge for him beating her up, she could, but she wasn't going to consider it that. She was a little surprised when Recovery Girl actually came back into the room. In the stands. Kaminari is surprisingly strong. Kyoka pointed out as they watched Denki take Shoji down with a massive burst of electricity. Shoji had been knocked out almost as soon as the round had started, the round taking about 2 seconds from start to finish. It had taken them a while to clear the ice off of the stage, but when the next round started, it had started off with a very bright flash. Shoji is unable to continue, but neither is Denki, ref. Idiot. Kyoka palmed her forehead, and she wasn't the only one. Denki had short-circuited his own brain, so he was just walking around with his thumbs sticking up. With a dumb-looking face, while Shoji was face down on the stage. He's so powerful, but he is such a glass cannon. Kyoka was embarrassed for him. His own power was his weakness, and overusing it caused him to become helpless. Got word from Midnight, it seems Denki will be announced the winner. Feel sorry for the guy, he got the short end of the electric quirk stick there. Kirishima spoke, having returned to the stands after his own humiliating defeat. The second his match had started, Siro got him with a surprise attack by wrapping him with tape. Being a close-range fighter, he had been taken by surprise and thrown out of the ring. Tanya vs Bakugo, think Tanya stands a chance? Kirishima asked around. Mina was just pale and sweating. I don't care about that. I fight Naruto in my next fight. I'm so going to get my face punches. Mina was shivering in fear. If you want, I've been watching Naruto fight, and might be able to help you with a strategy. Izuku said as he held his notebook up. He didn't know if it would help any, but since he met Naruto, the guy had been really cool. He had taken tons of notes about how Naruto fought, his quirk, and the way he fought without his quirk. He had originally thought of strategies to fight Naruto himself, not that they ever worked in the past. Mina gave him a big hug, before she took the notebook. Thank you. With this, I might only suffer small injuries. Mina had never been so happy to be in the same classroom as Deku the nerd before. I'm going to go use the bathroom, just in case. Mina stood up with a shiver. Never hurt to be safe. Chapter 44 Friend. You go Yeo Momo. You can win. Mina, you're supposed to cheer for me. Naruto shouted towards the stands. The match wasn't even started yet, and his own girlfriend was cheering for Momo instead of him. It was betrayal in the greatest sense of the word, kind of, but not really. He knew she just didn't want to fight him, which she would have to do if he won the fight against Momo. Momo was calmly watching Naruto, a very tense, serious look splayed on her face. His fight with Tsuyu hasn't drained him. I'm going to have to go full on from the beginning. His body is tough, so I'll hit him hard. I should stay far back though, flash grenades, and I should mix in some real grenades. With his tough he is, they shouldn't do a ton of damage. Momo thought as she started to go over all of the information in her head that related to flash and real grenades. Using her mind, she started to mentally prep what she was going to need for her quirk to work. Cannon. I'll make a cannon too, just in case he powers through the grenades. Momo thought as she unzipped her shirt, she was going to need a lot of skin revealed, so she unzipped and rolled up her sleeves so that all of her arms were revealed. Naruto glanced at her with a raised eyebrow. You know, we make a super team, kind of makes me wonder which of us is going to win. I want to use my quirk against you, since you're really strong, but this wouldn't be a test of my current level if I did that. Naruto was honest with her. He wasn't 100% on his chances to win with her, not like he was with Tsuyu or would be with Mina. He put his odds, without his quirk, closer towards 70% or so when it came to Momo. She smiled. Thank you for the compliment dash. Fight. But I don't plan on losing, even to you. Momo created grenades from her arms. As they fell out of the air, she started to throw them towards Naruto. I have faith in you to weather this. Momo shouted as she pulled pins and threw. The first was the flash. Then came the boom. Well damn, that hurt. Naruto shouted as he ran towards her with his eyes closed. His shirt was now in tatters, a bloody gash on his chest from the explosion, sharp metal chunks in his skin. Naruto rushed towards the grenades, and he weathered the storm of explosions, but was pushed by a little. He protected his face from the bright lights and the explosions, the ground around him blowing up and taking serious damage. A large chunk of rock hitting him in the head as she continued to lob grenades at him, and he opened one of his eyes with a growing grin. The cannon formed out of her stomach and hit the ground in front of her, already aimed at Naruto as she yanked on the rope in it. There was a loud explosion, as the cannonball went flying towards Naruto. She was obsessed with making him stay as far away from her as possible. You'll beat me in close range, no doubt, but if I can dash. Naruto caught the cannonball as he dodged it, before he spun around and added more momentum to it. With added power, Naruto flung the ball back at her with more speed and power. It landed right back in the hole it back from, and the cannon exploded. Momo jumped away from her creation as it went off, blasting itself to metal chunks. Forming a shield out of her arm, she knocked away any stray metal chunks that would have hit her. She rolled to her feet, and saw Naruto standing in front of her with a fist pulled back. Texas Smash! Naruto called out as his fist rammed into her shield, with enough force to dent the metal. She took a knee. Ah! Momo's pained shout spoke volumes. She glanced at her shoulder, which had been dislocated by the blow. She formed a smoke bomb and let it hit the ground between them, letting it explode and cover them in smoke. She quickly created a fireproof blanket, and ducked down and covered herself with it. Forming a lighter in her hand, she stuck her dislocated arm out of the blanket. This smoke is laced with isobutane, this is going to be very destructive. Click. Shit! Naruto managed to say, before the gas all around them exploded with enough force to shoot him straight up into the air. The tattered remains of his shirt was gone at this point, and his pants were turned into shorts as he curled up into a ball to protect himself from most of the powerful explosion. Spinning in the air, Naruto landed on the ground on his feet as the fire and flames started to vanish. There was Momo, hiding underneath a blanket, all around her was scorched stage ground, before she uncovered herself and stood back up. She wasn't smiling. I hoped that would have ended it. Momo had wanted to send Naruto to Recovery Girl as soon as possible, since she had actually inflicted some serious wounds on him. His chest had pretty deep gashes, his right arm was completely covered in blood and hanging limply at his side, before he flexed said arm and jerked it back into place. She grabbed her own arm, and snapped her shoulder back into its proper place. Not without a short shout of pain though. How did he do that without shouting in pain? Naruto just smiled. Grenades use not only flames, but sharp metal chunks to hurt people, and the gas explosion would have killed most people. Naruto pointed out with a growing grin. This girl. Anything less than lethal force will be wasted on you. I have too much respect for your strength and durability, to not attack you with enough power to seriously harm a person. If you were using your quirk, you could have attacked me before I even had the time to use my quirk. Momo pointed out as she formed a long rod of metal, and took it into her hands. She wasn't without her close combat ability, though it wasn't her forte. If she used a weapon, she might be able to cover for her weakness while she thought of something else to use against Naruto. She had originally hoped that the cannonball would have knocked him out of the ring, but it would seem that type of weapon could be used against her too easily. You're taking advantage of how strong my body is, you're using my strength as a weapon against me. I like it. Naruto thought it was a little poetic. The only reason she was able to do this, was because he was her opponent. She could use lethal weapons that she would never dream of using against another human, because they were being used against him. The second I hit you though. It's over for me. Momo knew, after taking that shielded punch, that if he scored a direct hit, she would be too stunned to be able to block a second or third hit. She would have to play some serious defense until she could come up with another counter against him. Naruto grabbed a rock from the ground, which had been knocked loose from her explosions, and he threw it at her full speed. The second he threw it, he rushed towards her with both of his arms low to the ground. She didn't block the rock, instead, she wisely chose to run towards Naruto and duck underneath. Shoving her rod into the ground, she jumped into the air high above him as he came in under her. In the stands. Wow. Yaoyorozu is really strong. She did some real damage to Naruto of all people. Izuka was just shocked when he saw that Naruto had been hurt by one of their classmates. He had thought that it wasn't possible, not once had somebody in their class really held a candle to Naruto yet. Kirishima frowned, and Mina was a little pale. Those wounds, they looked really bad. Ha! Take that, you bastard! Bakugo shouted as he pointed down at Naruto. He was the only one cheering against Naruto though, most of them weren't taking any sides. Naruto's heavy wounds weren't something they could cheer to continue. You heard them, it's because she is fighting Naruto, that she is able to use her quirk like this. I can't imagine how much this is hurting both of them. Naruto's being hurt physically, while it must be killing Yaoyorozu to inflict those injuries on him. Tanya added with a critical eye. He didn't like how far she was willing to do with this, but because it was Naruto she was fighting, this must was needed, it was required that she do this much to hope to win. Naruto hadn't expected his friend, Momo, to throw live grenades at him, or use highly explosive gas against him, so she had been able to get in a few free hits on him, surprise attacks to say. On the stage. Gotta keep up the defense. Momo thought as her rod was snapped in half when she tried to block a punch from Naruto. She tossed her broken weapon aside, and she formed a shorter version of it for one hand. In her other hand was a shield, but this time, the shield was made out of a stronger metal. She was forced on the defensive completely, with Naruto not allowing her to get any more range on him. Her advantage, long range, was now useless against him as he pushed close to her. She didn't take any blows full force, she used her shield whenever possible to divert the damage as much as she could. Naruto grabbed her by the throat and lifted her up into the air, before he threw her behind him, away from the edge of the ring. You almost walked out of the ring, you need to pay attention. This is a pretty good match, and I don't want you to ring out. Come on, let's see what else that pretty head of yours can come up with. Naruto turned around and rushed towards her. Momo's eyes widened. I almost walked off the edge. Momo would have lost, right then and there if Naruto hadn't rescued her from her own mistake. She looked back to where she was standing, and saw that she really had almost walked off the edge. She raised her weapon and swung it at Naruto, hitting him in the ribs. Naruto lowered his arm and trapped her weapon though, before he grabbed her by the arm. Raising her shield up, Naruto twisted her wrist and flung her entire body to the side without letting go of her arm. Guh! Like that, her arm was jerked out of its socket again, and she dropped her weapon and shield. She had to think of something, quickly, but she had to keep a watch on the ring edge again, and she had to make sure that she kept an eye on Naruto. There was so much to do, and if she made even one more mistake, it could be her own fault for losing. Naruto grabbed the back of her open shirt, before he pulled it over her head and covered her eyes with it. Grabbing her head with both of his hands, he pulled her down and kneed her in the stomach. When she was lifted off of her feet, he wrapped his arms around her torso, tossed her up into the air. He grabbed onto her feet, and swung her down. Instead of hitting the cement, Momo created a Seiyushin for herself to land on, which only softened the rough landing a little. She's not fighting as hard, it's like the confidence she had at the beginning of the match is fading. Naruto frowned as he flipped her over and grabbed onto her face. The look on her face was a lot different than before. He's got a hold on me, what do I make to? Momo started to think of anything that could get her out of this. Naruto straddled her, sitting on her thighs as he took firm grip on her. She wasn't able to move her legs, and Naruto grabbed her arms and pushed them above her head with his other hand. I'm going to lose. Are you okay? Naruto asked her, surprising her, despite how he was holding her down. Despite how bloody and injured he was looking down at her with such care. Her eyes widened in shock for a second. They were fighting, he wasn't supposed to show concern for her right now. He should be taking his fist, and using it to pound her face in, not that she wanted that, to be honest. Even in their fight, he was taking her mental health into consideration. Tears started to form at the edges of her eyes, and she looked at the wounds that she had put on his body. He had large gashes on his chest, his right arm was in horrible condition, his shins had massive burns on them, and he was bleeding from the forehead. All she had wrong with her was maybe some small bruises, and a dislocated arm. I took advantage of how tough you are. Momo whispered to him. The audience didn't hear her, she was so quiet. Yeah, it was a super smart strategy, you really fucked me up with that first attack, and that gas explosion was genius dash. I took advantage of how tough you are, so that I could hurt you this much. You're my friend, even if you would survive. I shouldn't have done this much to you. I went too far against you, fight or no fight. I inflicted these horrible wounds on you, and here you are, taking care of me even in our fight. Momo couldn't stop the shame she was feeling. She had used her brain to come up with the best strategy to try and beat Naruto, but it didn't beat him. All she did was seriously injure him, and instead of becoming worried about him like a good friend, she thought about ways she could win the match. I'm sorry, Naruto. I didn't mean. The tears started to flow more freely when she saw chunks of metal sticking out of his chest. Naruto sighed, before he smiled down at her. He softly bopped her on the head, much to her shock. Don't be a dummy, this hurts like a bastard, but I'll be fine. Now, let's finish this match, K. Naruto stood up off of her, and helped her to her feet. She rubbed her eyes, before she blushed. This was all on national TV, and as the two of them started to walk away from each other, she glanced back at him. She smiled as the two of them turned to face off again. Time to finish this, and I have just the perfect thing. Momo declared as she formed a cannon again, only this time, it had a surprise. Naruto took up a stance she recognized as what he used against Tsuyu earlier. That will really hurt if it hits. She spoke under her breath. Naruto grinned. The next thing Momo knew, was what Naruto's fist looked like up close. 5 minutes later. My head hurts. Momo moaned as her eyes started to open. What happened, did she win? Don't move enough too much, Naruto really gave you a good lick to the cheek there. Recovery girl stated as she finished wrapping up Naruto's arm, his chest already wrapped up. He didn't accept her healing, he just wanted her to take the metal fragments out, and that was it. Momo sat up and looked in the mirror, and she saw her right cheek was swollen up. Her arm was in a sling, and she had a large square bandage on her head. Naruto stood up and pat the top of Momo's head. You did really awesome out there. You're not great at close combat, but if you ever want some tips, feel free to come to me for help. That was a really fun match, I'm looking forward to doing this against with you. Naruto smiled at her. She blinked in surprise, before she nodded her head with a slowly growing smile of her own. She was half accepting her to hold a grudge for what she did to his body. Nope, it seemed that he wasn't that type of guy. Next time, I'll make a strategy that can beat you. I might have lost this time, but next time, I'll win for sure. Momo gave him her more dead serious look she could manage with a swollen cheek. He just grinned and leaned down so that their faces were inches apart. I'm looking forward to dash. The unspeakable happened. That's it for part 6. Thank you for watching and see you on the next video.